Good morning. It is Monday, February 22nd, 2021. This is U.S. History. I'm your instructor, Mr. Townsend. So this morning we're going to review, we're going to start off with a Zoom video. We're going to review checkpoint number 1 and checkpoint number 2. We're having a video on federalism and the Articles of Confederation. Today we'll be understanding and trying to put together a constitutional structure, Roger Sherman and the Great Compromise. And then we'll have a discussion about what we learned in class and what checkpoint number 2 is in Summit. And I'll sign it so you're able to do it. Okay, so I'm going to start the morning off with a little Zoom video. I thought it was funny, so I'm going to share it with you. And now I don't know where it went. Okay, just to get us started this morning, if I can get this thing up. Being a teacher and being on Zoom, one of my fears is what happened to this teacher right here. So I'll just share it with you. I thought it was funny.
Most of us are here, so if you want to pull out your Journeys book.
What was that? What was that? I think she That was a big one.
I don't know who it was, but whoever it was, it might be a little embarrassed, so let's stop.
I still want to know.
So, if you want to pull out your Journeys book.
No, so I thought that was funny. Getting caught farting. Little kids make it more funny. So our checkpoint number 1 for this class, this is actually backwards, excuse me. So your first checkpoint in Summit was, why did the framers, verbatim, the question from Summit is, why did the framers of the Constitution believe a new document was necessary? So there's 4 questions that should have been relevant for checkpoint number 1. And there were 3 documents assigned about what the founding fathers had to say about the articles. Good morning, Bev. So there was an article, I gave you a PowerPoint and I gave you 3 articles on Summit about the Articles of Confederation. And there was 3 founding fathers, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay, who gave feedback. And you were supposed to answer this question for your checkpoint number 1. Or you could address the weaknesses of the first document. So I know it's Monday, I know it's early, but does anyone remember any of the points that the founding fathers made about the first Constitution of the United States and why they needed a new document? Let's go forward and go backwards. So what was the name of the first Constitution of the United States? This is what checkpoint number 1 was on. So before our modern Constitution that we're used to, well, not modern, 1798, there was another Constitution that was written. And does anybody know the name of that first Constitution? We studied this last week or so in class. I put PowerPoints about this on Summit. So what was the name of the first Constitution? Take a guess. It's literally in the background, folks. Nazir, Amir, Bev, Deja, Meadow, anyone? What was the name of the first Constitution? It's literally right behind the red lettering. Thank you, Amir. Was it called the Articles of Confederation? So our 4 points for the Articles of Confederation. What problems did this document have? What were some of its weaknesses? What document replaced it? And for that one, the hint is that document includes the Bill of Rights and the preamble. So now we establish what the first name of the Constitution was the Articles of Confederation. So I have a video here that is going to review the Articles of Confederation and the circumstances that sets up our next essential question is how did the founding fathers in 1787, the Constitutional Convention, how did they structure this new document? How did they structure the Constitution of the United States? Looking at the Articles of Confederation and the weaknesses that the Articles of Confederation presented. How were the founding fathers going to make a new document that could handle the needs of this new republic or this new democracy here in America? So I'm going to put the video on. I'm probably going to watch about 6 minutes of it. And during that, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 questions down there. So if you have your cell phone, if you wouldn't mind taking a screenshot of those 4 questions. What was the name of the first Constitution? What is a supermajority? Name a weakness in the Articles of Confederation, and what was the Great Compromise? Those are the 4 questions I want you to focus on while we're watching the video. So if you want to scribble those down before we watch the video, or if you want to take a screenshot, you can do that. I can actually, you know what, I can also put them in a whiteboard. Let me open this up. So I'm just going to make a whiteboard with these 4 questions. So these are the 4 questions that I want you to focus on when we watch the video. So the Great Compromise. What was the name of the first Constitution? What is a supermajority? I want you to name one weakness in the Articles of Confederation. And what is the Great Compromise? And we'll come back to that. So let's go over to the video. Does anyone need those 4 points put up again before we start the video?
Yes, can you put it up one more time?
Okay. Here it goes. So the 4 are, what is the name of the Constitution?
Do we write it down on a piece of paper or?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to type them in on here, but you can put them any way you want on your end.
Okay.
It's probably a screenshot would probably be the easiest way.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do, but I'll write them down.
Okay. So we want to discuss what a supermajority is. And I'm going to say name, you know what I need to put at least. Just name a weakness in the Articles of Confederation. And what was the Great Compromise? So this document that was created, this Articles of Confederation, and had a boatload of problems. And I know now when you're watching this video, the presenter he's a little goofy, but his knowledge is sound. So don't pay so much to his mannerisms, to more than what he's saying. We're probably going to go to about the 6:10 or the 6:19 mark of this video. So what is the name of the first Constitution? Define what a supermajority is. Name at least one weakness in the Articles of Confederation. And what was the Great Compromise?
Copied us. What's that, Stan? We're not going to talk about other countries stealing our form of government because no other country stole our form of government? That doesn't seem possible, Stan.
Can everyone see the video and hear it? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Can you guys see this screen? I don't want to play this for 6 minutes and you can't see it.
No, I can't see the screen. All I see is questions from the video.
Okay, that's why I was asking. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so can you see it now?
Yeah.
America. Okay, here we go.
No, Stan, not the Libertage. Cue the intro. So today we're going to learn why the green areas of not America didn't copy us. All right, so as Americans may dimly remember from history classes, the constitutional system we've been living under since 1788, the year of the first presidential election, was not the original American government. The first government set up by the Continental Congress was called the Articles of Confederation, and it was, in a word, bad. In 2 words, it was not good, which is why it only lasted 10 years. The problem with the Confederation is that it wasn't so much a framework for a national government as it was a firm league of friendship, which unfortunately only sounds like a team of Care Bear superheroes. The Articles set up a government that consisted of a one-house body of delegates, with each state having a single vote, who, acting collectively, could make decisions on certain issues that affected all the states. There was no president and no judiciary. You can try to tell me that John Hanson, the president of the Congress, was the first American president, but it's just not true. Any decision required 9 of the 13 congressional votes, which pretty much guaranteed that no decisions would ever be made. Ah, supermajorities, always so efficient. But besides the 2/3 requirement, the Congress was very limited in what it could actually do. The government could declare war, conduct foreign affairs, and make treaties. Basically the stuff you need to do to go to war with England. It could coin money, but it couldn't collect taxes. That was left to the states. So if you needed money to, say, go to war with Britain, you had to ask the states politely. The Articles could be amended, but that required a unanimous vote, so 0 amendments were ever passed. The government was deliberately weak, which followed logically from Americans' fear of tyrannical governments, taxing them and quartering soldiers in their houses and so on. But here's the thing, weak government is like non-alcoholic beer. It's useless. That said, the Articles government did accomplish a couple things. First, it won the war, so yay! Unless you were a slave or a Native American, in which case, probable boo. Second, the government developed rules for dealing with one of the most persistent problems facing the new nation: Ohio, which was called the Northwest, presumably because it is north and west of Virginia. Getting control of the land meant taking it from the Indians who were living there, and the Articles government was empowered to make treaties, which it did. Crash Course World History fans will remember the Athenians telling the Melians that the strong do as they can and the weak suffer what they must, and the Americans definitely went to the Athenian school of treaty making. Through treaties signed at Fort Stanwix and Fort McIntosh, the Indians surrendered land north of the Ohio River. The biggest accomplishment of the Articles government was the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which set up a process to create 5 new states between the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. 2 things to know about this. First, it acknowledged that American Indians had a claim to the land and that they had to be treated better if settlers wanted to avoid violence. And second, Stan, can I get the foreshadowing filter? Yes, perfect. The ordinance outlawed slavery in all 5 of the new states. Still, the Articles government was a complete disaster for exactly one reason: it could not collect taxes. Both the national government and the individual states had racked up massive debt to pay for the war, and their main source of revenue became tariffs, but because Congress couldn't impose them, states had to do it individually. And this made international trade a total nightmare, a fact worsened by the British being kind of cranky about us winning the war and therefore unwilling to trade with us. In 1786 and 1787, the problem got so bad in Massachusetts Massachusetts that farmers rose up and closed the courts to prevent them from foreclosing upon their debt-encumbered farm. This was called Shays' Rebellion after Revolutionary War veteran and indebted farmer Daniel Shays. The uprising was quelled by the state militia, but for many, this was the sign that the Articles government, which couldn't deal with the crisis at all, had to go. But not for everyone. Thomas Jefferson, for instance, was a fan of Shays' Rebellion. A little rebellion now and then is a good thing. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Which is all fine and good, I mean, unless you're the bleeding patriots or tyrants. But to most elites, Shays' Rebellion showed that too much democratic liberty among the lower classes could threaten private property. Also, people who held government bonds were nervous because without tax revenue, they were unlikely to get paid back. And when rich people feel like something has to be done, something is usually done. Let's go to the thought bubble. The first attempt to do something was a meeting in Annapolis in 1786 aimed at better regulating international trade. Only 6 states sent delegates, but they agreed to meet the next year in Philadelphia to revise the Articles of Confederation. The delegates who met in Philly the next year had a funny definition of revision, though. Rather than make tweaks to the Articles, they wrote a new charter of government, the Constitution, which is, with some significant alterations, the same one that Americans live under and argue about today. Despite what some seem to believe, the 55 men who met in Philadelphia and hammered out a new form of government were not gods, but they were far from ordinary, especially for the time. Most were wealthy, some very much so. More than half had college educations, which was super rare since 0.001% of Americans attended college at the time. About 40% had served in the army during the war. But one thing they all shared was a desire for a stronger national government. The delegates agreed on many things. The government should have executive, legislative, and judicial branches and should be Republican with representatives rather than direct democracy. But the devil appeared in the details. Alexander Hamilton, probably the biggest proponent of very strong government, wanted the president and Senate to serve life terms, for example. That idea went nowhere because the overarching concern of almost all the delegates was to create a government that would protect against both tyranny by the government itself and tyranny by the people. They didn't want too much government, but they also didn't want too much democracy, which is why our presidents are still technically elected not directly by regular people, but by 538 members of the Electoral College. This system is so Byzantine and strange that when American politicians speak of spreading democracy through the world...
Okay, we're going to stop right there. Let's go back to our whiteboard and answer these questions. So what was the name of the first Constitution? What was it called? How you doing, Sammy? We're reviewing questions from the video. So question number 1, what was the name of the first Constitution? Amir had given it to me before. I don't know, I guess I lost Amir here. Oh, no, he's still there. Meadow, you with me? Deja, Kareem. What's the name of the first Constitution? It's like literally in the first 30 seconds of the video. Thank you, Deja. So it's called the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. That's the long, drawn-out version. The Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. Whoops. I guess that's too long. So the Articles of Confederation. Thank you, Deja. And then now they had a problem with passing. We'll get to the weaknesses here in a moment, but they had problems with passing any type of amendments or laws because they had something called a supermajority. And anybody pick up the definition of what it was really quick? I realize in retrospect that it was probably a little fast to pick up. But what is a supermajority? Think about the prefix super and what it means, like Superman or super slide or anything like that. And then think about the word majority. We've probably heard the word minority before, which is the opposite of majority. And a minority is the smaller group amount of people, and the majority is a larger amount of people. So what do you believe a supermajority is when it comes to agreement in presidential and, well, not presidential, in democratic processes? What is a supermajority? Anybody pick that up? or just using your logic, what would you think a supermajority would be? Sammy, I know you're a good thinker. Tell me what a supermajority would be if you had to put it into layman's terms or into regular words. How would you define a supermajority? Amir, Bev, Nazir, can you guys define what a supermajority is? How many colonies were there? The original colonies. Just going to go over and look at the original colonies real quick. How many, does anyone know how many original colonies were? I'll give you a clue. There's that many stars on Betsy Ross's flag. Support system. It is definitely a support system. It's definitely, you have to have the support of, I guess a good way to say it is that you have to have the support of a larger group than just a majority. If I had $100 and I said I was going to give you the majority of the money, I would be giving you more than 50%, correct? If we had a $100 bill and I said, I'm going to get the majority, you're going to get the minority, I'm going to get at least 60-40, maybe 70-30, 80-20. The problem with the articles was that you needed 9 out of 13 to pass anything. That's a difficult amount to make anybody agree on things, especially passing laws. Try to get 9 out of your 13 friends to agree with each other on anything. Go out for food and ask 13 different people what they want to eat and see if 9 of them can agree. It's probably going to be difficult. So that was some of the difficulties with passing the original any amendments. So these were our original 13 colonies right here. They're all tucked in the eastern seaboard of the United States. So this would be your eastern seaboard. That makes the Atlantic Ocean, your Pacific Ocean over here. And we live in one of the original colonies. We actually live in the first capital of the United States, Philadelphia. So you have these 13 original colonies, and they set up this document, but they had to have supermajority, which was 9 out of 13 of those colonies had to agree on what was going to be law. So a supermajority, as it comes defined to the colonies, would be an overwhelming majority, a larger majority than really needed. In this sense, it was 9 out of 13, which made it very hard for things to get done. 9 out of 13. So this document, it had a whole list of things that were wrong with it. Can you name one of the things or the weaknesses or the problems with the Articles of Confederation? At least one. What was one weakness? What couldn't they do? We know they couldn't pass amendments because of the supermajority. When you get your paycheck, what is taken out of it? What is taking out your paycheck from your employer, if you have one? Thank you, Amir. Tax. So taxes, the federal government today takes out, thank you, Sammy, takes out your taxes. So one of the weaknesses of the articles was no taxation. federal government had to rely on the states for money. It made it very difficult. Were they able to, was the Congress able to build an army at that time? What about an army? We talked about a rebellion in the 1780s called Shays. Micaiah, good morning. Let's see. So they couldn't they couldn't tax. They couldn't pass amendments. Which means they couldn't change the document. Whatever was set and it was set. What about currency? What about currency? Which is money. Who makes the currency today? Is there a place where money is made? I believe there's one here in Philadelphia. Who prints your money? Who prints money? I'll give you a clue. You throw this in somebody's mouth, that breath that stink. It's the same name. Who prints money? If you got $1, go look at it. What's it say on it? These are one of the powers of the Congress. So who prints money? Nobody know where their money comes from? I'm sure we all like money. But where does it come from? Who prints it?
The government?
The government, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. It's called the mint. The mint. The mint. There's one here in Philadelphia. So under the articles, they couldn't print money. Or they had money, and like I showed you before, the money was all different types. There was no set money. So you couldn't, it messed with trade, it messed with commerce. You couldn't print money. You couldn't quell rebellions. They couldn't put down rebellions. All right, good. Also, just some extra things I'll add here. You want to be taking notes of these, by the way, or screenshots, because you'll probably be covering this stuff in a checkpoint. So some of the other points that I had written down, that there was no president, or that's called the executive. There was no executive. There was no judicial. There was no courts. And then there was a bunch of debt that they had as a country for the wars that they fought. Now this last one, the Great Compromise, it's a difficult subject, but we're going to just skim over it really quick. It comes from a guy named Richard Sherman. And I want you guys I want to get some feedback on this, because it goes back to an essential question that we have. And that was the Constitution, was it a righteous document? Was it a fair document? Did it really Did they really make a document that's fair for all people? So the great compromise, and I don't know if I got that far in the video, maybe I cut it short, was the idea that big states wanted representation based off of populations. Small states wanted equal representation by the states. And because of that, we ended up with a bicameral system of government in which there are two houses, not just one, but two houses. And that is how power is shared. We should know our power. We should know our two houses, which are the Congress and the Senate. So the Great Compromise was a combination of the Virginia and the New Jersey plan. As far as this idea of representation by states and as far as population equal to representation, do you think that states that have more people, like California or Texas or one of the larger states, should have more representation, say in comparison to a state like Rhode Island? Okay, do I have any people that are really short? I'm like maybe 5'8". I'm definitely not tall. Do I have any other students that are short? I'm going to use it as an analogy. So if anyone that's willing to admit, I can't see your guys' faces or how tall you are, but is there anyone short? Now, I say short to me is under 5'8", I'm 5'7". 5'5" is really getting short, but is there anyone that is short, male or female? It doesn't matter. So all y'all playing the NBA? Everybody over 6 feet?
I'm exactly 6 feet.
Okay, good, Sammy. So Sammy's not short and in any stretch of the word, right? The point I'm trying to make is, in a democracy, it shouldn't matter how tall you are. When you go to the voting box, your vote should count just as much as an old lady who's 4 feet tall. So the analogy I was trying to make was, these large states felt, I'm bigger, I have more people, so therefore I should have more say in the processes of government. And these short states were saying, this is not fair. This isn't fair. We should have equal representation. And because of those two different warring ideologies, you end up with a bicameral government. And bicameral is a simple definition. It's just two houses. I think that for, without going through all the details, I think a senator runs 6 years and a congressperson's run 4 years, just like a president's term. So it's equal bicameral representation. That small states and big states get equal say inside of this government and how it's run. But they came up with something that I'm going to discuss with you real quick. Especially being Black History Month. We're getting toward the end of Black History Month. I know that this topic is still sensitive today, but you have to understand, I'm teaching you U.S. history, so I'm not going to candy coat U.S. history for you. And it's called the 3/5 Compromise. Has anyone ever heard of the 3/5 Compromise? It's a very important compromise in the sense of the racial equality in the United States, literally since the beginning of this country. And that goes back to the idea, is the Constitution a just document? Is it fair? Has anyone heard of the 3/5 Compromise? It's had to do with voting. Hold on a moment. All right, let me pull up the 3/5 compromise for you real quick. Thought I had that ready. It's kind of an appalling, it's an appalling ideology. It truly is. It shows you in our country the disdain and the mistreatment of the African American, particularly the African American male in this country since the advent of it. They say we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. That's what the Declaration of Independence says about this country, that all men are created equal. But then we have these exceptions inside of our documents. We have these exceptions inside of our voting regulations and our way that we treat each other, which goes back to this idea of a just document. Was the Constitution a just document? Was it written for everyone? Or was it written for a particular group of people? So when they came to this compromise, this is in 1787, inside the Constitutional Convention here in Philadelphia, what they did, they decided that states would count their population, particularly when it came to slaves, because they could count their black male slaves, that they would count them as 3/5 of a human being. 3/5 of a human being. And if you haven't heard that terminology before, I learned this studying Brother Malcolm back in the early 90s and understanding the dehumanization, in particular, of people of color and women in this country's history. So when I say 3/5 of a human being, and that's for voting purposes, which means for every 5 black men, it was worth 3 votes. So if there was 10 black men, it was 6 votes, 15, 9, and so forth and so on, which devalued legally slaves to a portion of a human being. So these shortcomings in the document, this idea of being 3/5 of a man. I can see you snoozing, good brother. Kareem, your camera's on. Okay, so this disdain, this idea of being 3/5 of a man, of only being considered to be 3/5 of a man or 3/5 of a human being. The idea of that is kind of appalling. And I don't know how we feel about it, but I got it for you, Kareem. But how would you feel if you felt that your votes, because of the color of your skin, were worth less than someone else's? How would you feel voting in a process where you were devalued as a human being? What type of feelings would you have toward that type of system? This history that I'm teaching you, I know it seems like it's so long ago when you see 1790, when you see 1860 or 1817. But to put it in perspective, my grandmother was born in 1931. Her mother was born back in the 1870s. So my great grandmother was the daughter of slaves, sharecroppers. That's not a long, long time ago. It truly isn't. So the system that benefits, or the system that was set up, the structure of document, it didn't give everyone equal representation because they treated slaves in particular like they were property, that they weren't human beings. So they were deprived of those constitutional rights that they were supposed to have. And we're going to have a whole section on slavery and the Constitution, and is it a righteous document? Does it really help everyone? Okay, good. So we answered those 4 questions. It is called the Articles of Confederation. If I were you, I'd be writing this down. What is a supermajority? It's a larger majority of a body or of an entity or constituency, a group of people. We made a list of all the weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation. And I just defined to you that the Great Compromise was the Virginia and New Jersey plan going together. Remember, Sammy is 6 feet tall. I am 5'8", but we get the same and equal votes at the ballot box. And also the thought of a bicameral system of government, 2 houses. We have 2 houses, not 1. So how did the Constitution structure the new government? So this is your new essential question, which is, in a sense, your checkpoint. There's going to be 3 sections to this. What is the preamble? What are the articles? And what are the names of the 3 branches of government? And then you're going to answer, you're probably going to respond and do some functionality. So the preamble, let's get to define the preamble. Then we're going to watch this video on the structure of the government. And I want you to answer these questions. So before we read it, the preamble is the beginning of our democracy, this new document. And we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States. So that's the preamble. That's the opening part of the Constitution. So there's 6 goals: to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promoting the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty. Those are our 6 goals of the Constitution. Let's go back and watch this video real quick. This is more of an instructional video on the Constitution. And it goes with our theme of the structure. So I'm going to put a new whiteboard here. So does everybody have the answers here on the whiteboard before I get rid of this that we went over? Because these will probably be included in checkpoints. So if I were you, I would real quick, I would take a picture or write down the notes that we have. Can't see the bottom. Okay, sorry, man. Let's see. Why is this? Number 7 just says debt, D-E-B-T. That's it, debt. So take these notes down. Now there's a whole nother list of weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation from our first unit that you can go back and reference. So does everybody have that before I get rid of it? Matter of fact, I'm gonna take a screenshot myself. All right, everybody have it? Okay, so I'm going to clear this. All right, so we have another question box for this video. Sammy, you have checkpoint number 1 that we reviewed before you came in. And checkpoint 2 will be based off of the idea of the restructuring of the government. And you'll get that on Thursday. I'm sorry, on Thursday. So right now we should have checkpoint number 1 done. And there's an in-depth instructions on Summit. If you go to your announcements on Summit, there should be instructions just like that. Okay, so I'm gonna start the video on oops, I lost it here.
Our notes tonight are about the structure of the U.S. Constitution. So we're going to take a look at what is in the Constitution itself and sort of how our government is set up. And if you start at the beginning of the Constitution, the first thing that you are going to come to is called the preamble. And this is where we get, we the people. So the word pre kind of clues you into where it's located, right? Pre, before. So it's kind of before the main body. It's the introduction. So what is the preamble? It is the opening sentence of the Constitution. And it's kind of a long sentence, but it's one sentence. And it begins famously with "we the people." And it establishes that the people are the source of power and authority in America. So right from the very beginning, it says "we the people," right? That it's going to be the people that give the government the power. It also establishes goals for the government. And there are several of them, like establish justice and provide for the common defense. So it sort of sets a broad purpose for the government. It says, here's the goals that we're aiming for. And remember, you can always pause this video as needed in order to get the notes down. So after the introduction, after the preamble, comes the main body of the Constitution, and those are called the Articles. Don't confuse this with the Articles of Confederation. This is the Constitution, and it's made up of 7 different articles. So think of it as like a section. And what the articles do is they establish the structure of the government. They are this is like the blueprints. This is what our government is going to look like. So we're going to take a look at each article. Article 1 sets up the legislative branch. And it's by far the longest of the 7 articles. The legislative branch in our country is called Congress. And Congress's main job is to make the laws. Some of the powers that the Constitution gives to the legislative branch, and only the legislative branch, are the power to collect taxes. Right? If you remember, that's something that we didn't have in the Articles of Confederation, and it made the government too weak. Congress has the power to declare war. And Congress has the power to coin money. So only Congress can make money. No more having different currencies for different states. We're going to have one set of money, and Congress is the one that can make it. Now, these are certainly not the only powers that Congress has. There's some other really important ones too. These are just some examples. Article 2 sets up the executive branch. And in our country, the executive is called the president. And the president's main job is to enforce the laws. Some powers that the Constitution gives to only the president. The president is the commander of our armed forces, so that he commands the military. The president has the power to make treaties with foreign countries. And the president has the important power to appoint people to high-ranking positions. So we're talking there about things like appointing people to the Supreme Court or appointing ambassadors to other countries. Article 3 sets up the judicial branch, the third branch of government. And in our country, the top court is called the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court's main job, is to interpret the laws. Some of the powers that the Supreme Court has, and only the Supreme Court, is the power to review decisions of the lower courts, to rule on cases that involve two states, and most importantly, to decide whether laws are constitutional.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there.
Article 4
Oh, sorry.
moves into some different areas.
So this video started discussing the structure of our government. There was a couple questions that I wanted to just go over real quick. So Maya, good morning. So this lesson that we have today, of course, it has to be done in 2 periods because it's quite a bit. But for those students that are really interested, oh my goodness, it's snowing again. Are you kidding me? Is it snowing outside where you guys are at? I'm up in Mount Airy. I looked outside and it's snowing again. Ay vey. So for our new question will be, how did this Constitution structure the new government? In what ways did it improve on the Articles of Confederation? So the first question they asked you was, what is the preamble? And the preamble is the prologue. It's the beginning of the Constitution. It lays out basically the mission plan for democracy. And the gentleman started to get in some of the articles. And these are more technical things. So we'll come back to these. Let's see. So these are some of the articles of the Constitution. These are full articles of the Constitution. So just the goals of the Constitution real quick. And then we'll probably end with that. We'll go to checks and balances next time. So let me just put up the goals of the Constitution for you. So there's 6 goals of the Constitution in the preamble. If I can get this thing. Okay, here we go. Hello. For some reason, this is not letting me write.